Hey, Vi, welcome to another edition here of the Simplifying Entrepreneurship podcast. It's wonderful to have you back here
Hello
today.
again, Pete.
Great to see you.
Great to see you too.
I'm excited about today's topic. The soft part of our business, people. And it's such a big part of the business, and hiring is such a big part of the business, and hiring correctly. And today's sort of question of the day is how do you attract the right fit talent to your business? Love
You
to
asked
hear
me to
your take
speak.
on that.
You asked me to speak about the most favorite part of my job, recruiting. I think I'm a recruiter at heart, regardless of what level of human resources I may reach. I think I would like to always be a recruiter. It always intrigues me when I interview, the different kinds of behaviors that candidates and future employees portray when they are in their interview. There are ways and techniques how you know whether it's their best behavior or whether that's who actually they are. And even as a human being, when you're on the other side of the table as a candidate, you want to be cognizant of how you're portraying yourself and your skills. So a very good question. Thank you for asking that question. And for entrepreneurs, it becomes a little bit more, I would say, easier to be, when they're trying to develop a new team or a new organization or a new culture. They get to decide what culture they actually want, what kind of skills, behavioral competencies they want in the organization to be able to reach to where they want to be able to reach or achieve what they want to be able to achieve. So, deciding um, on that core competencies in terms of behavioral competencies is the key thing that that will allow entrepreneurs to be able to find the right fit for themselves. Do you want, I remember in one of my interviews the CEO asked me, what are your ideas about, what if I give you stock options? And I was very naive and I said, no, I want my salary instead. And what he was trying to assess at that time, he of course hired me, but what he was trying to assess at that time is I want employees in my organization to be entrepreneurs themselves, take ownership, take
Yeah,
accountability, own the
exactly.
business, own your area of business. And that is what will allow you to make sure that you understand the risks that come with owning the business, the risks that come with taking risks itself. So I think that is what, if you want passionate people, if you want people who are just doers, if you want administrators, if you want just mechanics, you want just people to move things from one place to another, depends on what you want, and hire for the right fit based on the behavioral competencies you want your culture to portray.
I like that. One of the tools that I have in my business, I call it the candidate evaluation, and I'd like your opinion on it. I haven't shown this to you before, but I'm going to hit you up with it. And one of the things I do when I hire, and what I often recommend when to people that I work with and coach with, it's like there's the four C's, and the first C is capability. What's their ability to do the job? Number two is capacity. What's their ability to grow, fulfill their job requirements, and advance in the business? Number three is confidence. Because confidence is, you can either have too much confidence or too little confidence.
Yeah.
So I think confidence is a piece of the puzzle. And the other one is culture.
Yes.
And does the culture fit? Are they the right fit for the organization? And way I weight these things, even though there's only four boxes, I weight the first three out of 20 and the last one out of 40. So it equals 100. So culture for me is 40 points out of the 80 if they fit in the right mix. And the other three boxes are only 20 points. What's your thought on that?
um okay, you may not like my thought on it. I
That's
would
okay.
but yes, I would not hire for a culture fit, because then you tend to achieve, as an organization, you do not want anyone who is challenging your culture. Your culture may be good for you, but you are never growing as an organization. As I said, the herd immunity in my previous conversation that we had, there is a herd culture. You
Yeah.
want to be able to see challenge. You don't want people who are always coming together in whatever you do. You want those few odd ones who would kind of come and say, hey, yeah, great, you have a great culture, but have you thought about this and have you thought about that? The challenge always kind of makes sure that you don't get into your comfort zones. You
Yeah,
as a
I think that's an interesting way to look at it because those, as we call it, odd ducks or whatever you want to call it, they can still be part of and the way I look at it is they can still have the culture of your business in mind,
yeah.
but they having the ability to challenge it, I think is the culture itself. To challenge it, challenging culture is a good thing.
Yes,
So,
challenging culture is a great thing, in fact.
yeah.
And, that is why when you say that you are going to wait, 40%
Yeah.
is what the issue is going to be. Because, you may have somebody who, probably brings out the best in their work, or, just by being themselves. They operate, you must have heard about a lot of behavioral competencies, the disc analysis or the
Yeah, sure.
insights, or, people
Love
with
them. A lot of
personality
those.
traits. Like, I come from a corporation where, we used to have those kind of color combinations written outside of our cubes. And, people, before they would come to meet with us, they will say, oh, you carry orange, blue. Then maybe you don't want people to kind of come and automatically to ask you a question,
Right.
because they don't want to disturb you. And I think that kind of culture creates silos and doesn't allow a lot of gelling between different departments or different organizations or different thought processes even. While you should be appreciative of other people's time and their work and what they are trying to achieve in their own in the 8 hours that they're trying to put in the organization. However, at
Yeah.
the same time, we spend a lot of waking hours in the company that we work in. And it there has to be some kind of a flexibility which you should allow in your organization. And when you try to uh, look for culture fit, what that does is you try to bring in people just like yourself. And you don't do it on a deliberate basis unless and until you're very conscious about how you're hiring. There are multiple biases, and these biases already make it difficult, and your choice is very wrong sometimes because of the biases when you're interviewing people.
Yeah, I
So
like that.
yeah, so maybe you want to definitely hire for culture, because if they are a complete opposite,
Yeah.
then you don't want them. You want them to succeed. You want all your employees to succeed. So
Yeah. No, I like that, Vi. That's great. I mean, that's the point of having conversations, right?
yes,
And the fact that people have different views on different things and everything, that makes us all better.
yes,
That makes everything
absolutely.
awesome, right?
Yeah.
So great, awesome. What are the costs of hiring incorrectly was one of the
Oh,
things I
very
was going
high,
to ask you.
very high. I mean, I'm not even talking about the cost that you can place a value on. Of course, those costs are there.
Yeah.
However, I think I read somewhere in a research that I researched about, what are the costs of hiring poorly, because we had a very high attrition rate in the manufacturing and warehousing industry that I was employed with, and it is more than $10,000. However, these employees were all minimum wage, and how would the cost be $10,000? It's the investment, and it's about the people who bring them to be where they are, even if it is 1 month, 2 month, or 3 months. That's that, and the training costs and the investments by the company in terms of the hours they put in, that makes it so expensive. Besides the dollar value, I think um, it's the complete morale that gets hit. Why don't people want to stay with the organization?
Yeah. Yeah.
And not many entrepreneurs, not many leaders, not many managers tend to think like that. Not many managers tend to think like that. It may be the model of the business, and that's fine. Wherein if it's a part-time job, people are only working
Yep.
during hours which are, outside of their school. I had a very interesting communication when I was hiring part-timers with my HR manager. And I said we should create an external bench wherein every year during summer we hire the same students. We create an external bench of talent, and every summer they come, they work with us, and then at the end of 4 years, 5 years, whenever they are ready, you hire them as full-time employees, and you know for a fact that they are committed, they know your culture, they are trained. You tend to gain so much out of that process. So
Yeah.
that it's a loss of knowledge, regardless of whether it's 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, doesn't matter.
I have a friend of mine who is a retailer, and they have a wonderful nursery. And from that perspective, they often get the same people back every year. And
Yes.
having that ability is just a wonderful thing.
Yes.
And as those people, if they're going to school and stuff like that, when they're finished school, then they can come and work on a full-time basis if they want. Or even if they don't, they have that cumulative experience year after year so that they've had them all 4 years, and it's really becomes this right fit for them.
That's right. Yeah.
I like that returning portion that you just mentioned there. I
Yes.
think that's awesome.
External bench.
External bench. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
my
like
HR manager, when I gave that idea to him, he said, if anyone asks you, tell them it's my idea. That is his idea.
that. I like that one. That's good. What are the three key things that people overlook when hiring by?
Actually, the most silliest mistake, I would call it a silly mistake that people do or organizations do, is they don't have an exact idea as to why the job is posted. Like, is it a new job? Is it a replacement? Or is it just like that? Like, I there is no evaluation of why that job is or should be holding a place in the organization, in your organization chart, in your position evaluation. There is no deep thought that's given into it. I had a founder who once told me, let's hire for a product manager. And I'm like, okay, product manager, tell me more. And he didn't tell me more. And then finally, at the end of the day, he actually wanted to hire somebody on the shop floor, meaning like a production manager. But he didn't want him to call him a production manager because we already had a few of those, and he wanted this particular person to be able to do something else that he was not sure what he was going to do. So the problem starts from, if you have not evaluated the job, why you need the job, what the person is going to do, how can you create a job description. And I think most HR managers or HR leaders will probably agree that the most difficult task is to create a job description that will say everything about what the person will do, and what the person is expected to perform on, and thereby finding the right people for the right job.
And fitting them into the accountability chart or the organizational chart, right?
Absolutely, that's your starting point, and a job evaluation is your starting point of any job or any position that you have in an organization. I think that's the most um, easiest thing to be overlooked. It is usually based, and entrepreneurs are the key culprits. I would call them a culprit because
Yep,
it just comes out of their whims and fancies, saying, I have seen this happening somewhere else, let's do it in ours.
it's true.
Doesn't work like that.
It's true. I mean, early on in my earlier years, I certainly did that. It's like, oh, let's just go, right? And
Yeah.
I'm a little more regimented about it now, and 27 years later of being an entrepreneur. But I can certainly recall those days where you're just kind of hiring, and
Yeah.
it's I like what I mean. I got the words accountability chart from Gino Wickman when he wrote the book Traction, as
Yeah.
opposed to organizational chart.
Yeah.
And I've always liked that idea of
Absolutely.
having an accountability chart. Like, who are you accountable to and what are you accountable for, as opposed to just kind of popping it up there. And I like the idea of your accountabilities more than I like the idea of your title.
Correct. Absolutely correct. Yes.
you know and that's a big thing. That's a mental shift for, I think, a lot of entrepreneurs, that people want titles, right? I want a
Yes.
title. But really, what comes with a title? Well, accountability. And
Accountability comes with the title, yes, but not
yeah,
a lot of them understand that.
I
It looks
know.
good on your resume, on your CV, and that's the next step. It will be portrayed as a next step in my career. And it goes both ways. We cannot just blame employees and candidates that they want a title, because
Not at all.
organizations have a bigger responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility, as Spider-Man says, right? Organizations have a collective responsibility to be able to be cognizant of the fact that these titles are important, and sometimes as a negotiating tool they just give it to candidates, just because they want the candidate so bad.
It's amazing, when I look at some of this stuff. One of the things that we're talking about, sort of the placement and all that sort of stuff. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the idea that looking at compensation as an investment as opposed to an expense. You know, we started off the conversation with saying that, yeah, there's cost to, this, but when you reframe your people as an investment as opposed to an expense, it just changes things.
Yes, it's an expenditure versus an expense. Expenditure is an investment. When you
Right.
invest in your tools, when you invest in your plant machinery, when you invest in your assets, it's an expenditure. That's how it gets written off in your book. An expense has is just an expense. It just happens. It's like your food expense, or it never ever comes back in the book the same way that it came the past year. So yes, it is an investment, and it has got to be an investment at all points in time. Compensation and total compensation, although payroll comes on the liability side of your financial statement, it is not a liability, it's an asset side. And as an HR professional, and again, my HR friends would agree with me, it has been a struggle for us to be able to get that space and move from the liability side of the balance sheet to the asset side of the balance sheet, and get organizations to understand that people are their assets and it's an investment. And and the return on the investment is not immediate, never immediate. It is over time, and that's one investment. Just like time is an investment, people are an investment itself.
For sure. I love that. I think that's for me sort of a key takeaway here today too, is that if we can get entrepreneurs to look at that and to
Yes,
say, let's move it over onto the asset side, right? From a
yes,
managerial, I mean, from a financial side of accounting, yeah, it's got to be on the expense side. But from a managerial side of the accounting, when you're looking at it, it truly is an asset, and
it is.
that's a big takeaway here too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, do you have any final takeaways here to share with our listeners today, Vi?
The final takeaway, we've got a lot of mantras these days about people, and, our investment in people. Servant leadership is, although has been there for many years, at least in the cultures that I come from. I would also kind of put into the ears of my listeners this idea about tough love, right?
Yeah.
It's just like parenting. Any organization managers have to do a little bit of babysitting. It's the proportions that you have to manage, and not really the babysitting itself. Employees just need the right dose of tough love, and you will be sure to succeed in bringing out the best in them.
I love that, and I think everybody needs a little tough love every now and then, whether it's your family or your friends or your employees or your
There you go.
it's around the circle, right? We all need a little shot every now and then to bring us back to reality.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your all of your wisdom here today on the Simplifying Entrepreneurship podcast. I really appreciate it. Um, I'll just ask you if somebody wants to reach out to you and get a hold of you regarding any of these conversations or just wants to touch base, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
I'm very open to any mentorship requirements that any of our listeners have, our young HR grooming professionals. I'm available easily on my email. I always respond to my emails within 24 hours. My email address is vaish32 at yahoo.com. That's the first five letters of my name, 32 at yahoo.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. I'm looking forward to yet another version. As so happy that you've agreed to be a special recurring guest here on the Simplifying Entrepreneurship podcast. Looking forward to our next conversation, Vi. So until then, make it a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.